Welcome everybody to today's Season 3 breakdown of the very first episode titled Shattered. What an episode premiere it was, starting right where we left off on Season 2 and ending with a gut-wrenching loss of one of our most beloved characters. The writers did not hold back on the horrors and mysteries that we, as fans, have come to expect.
This episode kept us glued to the show from start to finish, and every minute of it was a wild ride of emotions. It is building to the premise of what we have come to love about this show, and we can't wait to see what else the showrunners and writers have in store for us this year.
We start with Tabitha waking up in the hospital, in a new place after hikers found her 3 days earlier. With the police wanting to question her, and Tabitha wanting desperately to get back to her family, she sneaks out and into the town of Camden, Maine, where everything is unfamiliar to her. On a quest to find more answers about Fromville, she is determined to find a way back. Along the way, she appears to see the boy in white blindly following him through the town and into a small shop, hoping to confront him about what he said to her. This is the only way. Only to discover she grabbed a child that made people look at her like she was insane. Disheveled and confused, Tabitha continues to make her way through town, ending up at a small flea market where she asks a pair of teenage girls to borrow their phone. Hesitant at first, one of them finally allows her to make a call, and her first call was to her mother. A heart-wrenching phone call that reminded her of home, unable to disclose where she is, yet still trying to console her mother that everything is okay. Through her tears, her mother reminds her of her faith. After ending her call, visibly upset, she hears the sound of church bells and makes her way towards them. Once inside, she enters the confessional, trying to make sense of the situation she has found herself in, argues with the priest on whom to blame for the situation her family was forced into. The priest, in a roundabout way, gets her to take a look within the lunchbox that Victor gave her before she went through the bottle tree to the lighthouse. In it, she found an apple, 2 eggs, a drawing of Julie wrapped around an unknown item, and what appears to be a talisman. Upon further discovery, she saw Victor's address written within it. If lost, please return to 1597 Burrough Street, Camden, Maine. Having discovered this with a new clue in hand, she quickly ran out of the church in search of answers, bringing her further down the rabbit hole of discoveries. She ends this episode at the home of Henry, who she confirms is Victor's father, who was not very welcoming to her, and being triggered when he saw her with the lunchbox, ending her story this episode with him demanding to know where she got it.
In the premiere episode, we see Boyd cleaning his wounds both physically and mentally, as he tries to gather himself as best he can. It is here that we see the first sign of his hands once again starting to shake, and a second time when he is pouring himself a drink later on. This makes us question whether the worms temporarily healed his Parkinson's. Did being bit by the spiders have no effect on him? And why is the healing factor that we have somewhat seen here not working for him like it did others like Ethan and his son Ellis? We see Father Kotri again appear to him, doing his best to bring out the doubt within him as he tries once more to manipulate Boyd's emotions. He starts out by tearing down the fact that he tells him everything is fine, doing his best to make him doubt that very statement. As the conversation continues, Father Kotri tries even harder to make the point of fear, telling Boyd that maybe this town is not panicking enough, and that he might not be panicking enough, doing his best to draw out the internal fears and struggles within him. It's as if he was feeding off of these fears, but Boyd is beginning to doubt who or what he is as he questions Father Cautry's origins, and his only reply was that he couldn't tell him, furthering this mystery whether he is a true hallucination or something connected to one of the two sides we think to be at play within Fromville. As Boyd continues to struggle keeping the town from falling apart, he is faced with the realization that the food shortage is tearing a further divide among them. He tries to remain strong as he is forced to intervene when Randall attempts to take one of the goats, and as Ethan and Victor try to stop him, Victor pulls out his gun, and Boyd does his best to reassure everyone that the only way they go home is together, and for a brief moment is able to de-escalate the situation. This was also the moment we see a change to Ethan's demeanor. With his mom now gone and his beloved goat Alma's life on the line, this incident has begun to change him. Boyd does his best to keep everyone and everything from falling into chaos, but he does not know how long he will be able to keep them from total self-destruction.
When we first see Fatima in the premiere episode, we see her struggling with her pregnancy as she is visibly getting extremely sick. As Nikki continues to pound on the door, Fatima does her best to gather herself before leaving, only to have Nikki rudely push her way past to use the bathroom, pointing at the fact she is getting double rations, and that Colony House may not be as all-loving as we first were shown to believe. Unable to eat or keep anything down, she reassures Ellis that she is fine, somewhat easing his concerns while the tensions in Colony House are clearly rising. As Ellis seems visibly on edge, Tilly conveniently tries to reassure him that Fatima and the baby will be okay, in the convenient way she likes to randomly appear.
With his journey into the cave still unknown, there is one thing that is clear. The weight of the symbol is truly taking its toll on Jade, as we see him lying under a bunch of strings that he has hung above himself, trying to figure out his visions and how they connect to the town and hopefully the way home. As we see Jade fall into this debilitating reaction to the symbol and his visions, Boyd and Kenny come to find him in this maddening state, rambling to himself almost incoherently. Boyd and Kenny do their best to get him to sleep it off at the post office, only to awaken with no less of a peace of mind to any solution. With night now upon them, Boyd is quickly distracted when the livestock is seen freely roaming about the town, and Jade is forced to follow him as he takes the talisman from the wall of the post office. Jade does his best to help gather them, only to see the true horrors of the monsters for the first time, as they rip one of the cows apart in front of him, causing him to become paralyzed with fear and Victor having to snap him out of it. Once he gathers himself together with Victor, they gather as many of the sheep they could, bringing them back into the bar in hopes to stay safe for the rest of the night.
With the aftermath of the cicadas and music box still possibly lingering on, we come to Elgin, who is still unable and fearful to sleep. Feeling as if something is watching him, the line between reality and a dream seems to be becoming blurred as he fights to stay awake. He seems to unknowingly slip into a dream as once again Tilly conveniently is shown to be there trying to ease his worries. As Tilly tries to comfort him, he talks of a woman who plagues his dreams, and that every time he wakes up, he seems to forget, but the lingering feeling of someone watching him stays with him. As they continue to talk, Tilly freezes with fear as the image of a kimono woman appears to be standing somewhat down the hallway, and Tilly makes note of how scary she seems to be, causing Elgin to freeze in fear, looking down the hallway to see her for himself. Once noticed, the kimono woman, in a ghostly glide, makes her way to him, grabbing at his face, with water dripping off of her. We can almost hear her say what seems to be hide, as he is jolted back awake, unable to understand or even remember what the dream means, leaving further questions to who or what this ghostly kimono woman could be.
When we first see Jim, he runs over to Tien Chen, who luckily found Ethan after he ran away in search of Tabitha. In this moment, Ethan scolds his father about having to look for his mom, and Jim knows that he has to do something, otherwise Ethan will never stop trying to find her. As Julie appears, Jim does his best to reach out to her, but it is clear she has truly been affected by whatever happened to her while under the spell of the cicadas. Walking away, doing her best to assure her father that she knows none of this was his fault, but comfort from her dad is not what she needs right now, and all Jim can do is accept it. Jim, seeing his children falling apart, makes the decision that he needs to try and find Tabitha, only to have Boyd try to stop him, warning him of all the terrors that could possibly be within the forest and what he himself has seen and been through out there with Sarah. Determined to find his wife, he ignores Boyd's warnings and readies himself to leave, when Kenny offers to join him to ease the fear of Boyd and help keep him alive during his search. With this, Boyd agrees and does his best to map out what he knows, hoping it will help them as they do. With the decision made, Jim does his best to assure Ethan not to worry and that they will figure out what happened to Tabitha. He forces Ethan to promise that he will not run away again to go looking for her, and to give him the chance to try and find her himself, to which Ethan agrees and hugs his father goodbye. As their journey in the woods begin, they find themselves past the talisman hut, only to discover odd full-body totems within the forest, which seem to lead them to a group of what appear to be small abandoned cabins that clearly look like someone once lived within them. With night quickly approaching, they decide to stay within one of the small cabins, hanging their talismans up and sealing the door, only to hear an ominous sound of someone or something outside. And it was in this moment of fear that Jim realized he had to stay alive for his children now more so than ever. He is now forced to decide either abandon his search for Tabitha and go back to his children, or risk his life by going deeper into the forest, and this could result in him leaving them truly alone and with no one if he were to die. We end their story this episode with Kenny unaware of the horrors that await him when they return back to town, and Jim not knowing if he will be able to keep his children safe and ever discover what truly happened to Tabitha.
Donna, Ellis, and others from the town go to check on the harvest and the remaining crops left undamaged by the storm, only to find that the rest of the crops were rotten as if the soil became suddenly poisoned. Ellis quickly runs to Boyd to bring him to the fields to show him what happened. Boyd, wanting to keep things calm, asked Donna how many people knew about the rotten food, but it was too late. Back in town, word had gotten out, and people in a mob-like form gathered at Tien Chen's house to claim the last of the remaining food. Overpowered and overwhelmed, Tien Chen had no way to stop them from pushing their way into her home and taking what was left for themselves. After the incident with Randall, Victor, and Ethan, Boyd and Donna are back discussing the situation with Tien Chen. They begin to talk about butchering the animals to give them enough time to possibly plant crops in other locations. When Ethan walks in, overhearing this and having love for Alma, the goat, he runs off, again having to see the reality of From and not just the fantasy quest he started with upon first entering the town, weighs heavy on him. As night falls and the animals are released into the streets, the reality sets in about how little they truly have and how dire their situation has truly come to be.
The monsters at the end of the episode display their evolution and intelligence while going after the townsfolk as we see them set a trap to lure them outside for the very first time. It all started with them letting out the animals, knowing it was their final resource to survive, causing a downward spiral effect on people like Boyd and Ethan. Boyd desperate to save the animals as food, and Ethan seeing his beloved goat Alma, both dropped all reason and protocol to save them, leaving many of the townspeople at risk or in danger. After Boyd takes the talisman from the post office, Jade is left without safety for the remainder of the night, and has no choice but to follow Boyd out to gather as many of the animals and get them back into the barn as possible. Only to have the milkman monster rip out the throat of a cow right in front of him, showing their strength and determination to break each and every one of them. With Ethan's desperation and attachment to Alma, he opens the door without thinking, only to be confronted with the granny monster standing in wait. This forced Ethan and Julie to flee the safety of their home that was sealed with the talisman and to run out into the streets to try and survive. Their only hope being Sarah, she quickly steps in to help them, leading them to a small hiding place, but it would not be enough to keep them safe all night. Taking the chance, they run, and with the help of Randall are able to make it to the bus just in time. As Boyd continues to try to wrangle the other cow, Tien Chen tries to help, and together they think they arrive to the safety of the barn as Boyd hangs the talisman in what he thinks is just in time, only to discover that some of the monsters were lying in wait, ready to break Boyd as he posed the challenge they would not be able to. Having to watch a beloved member of the town being taken by force, the monsters begin to taunt him and handcuff him, forcing him to see the true horrors that they can instill. Ending the episode with the cries of Tien Chen and the pain on Boyd's face as he stares at the monsters, seemingly ripping her apart, showing that the true breaking of Boyd is here, and her screams fill the room as the episode comes to an end.
Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications. Stay tuned for upcoming videos and live streams on From, as well as future giveaways. And don't forget to lock the doors, hang those talismans, and as always, stay safe out there, Fromville.
Trapped in Fromville, where nightmares collide. Monsters in the shadows, nowhere to hide. Lighthouse flickers, visions in the dark. Every step forward, another ripped apart. Street filled with whispers, eyes always peek. Nightmares descend, sanity's on a streak. Doors creak open, shadows start to move. Town's got a rhythm, every step's a groove. Fromville nights, monsters out to feed. Trapped in visions, fear plants the seed. Lighthouse calls, but escape's a myth. Nightmares wrap around on an endless drift. Screams echo through the misty air. Every corner turned, you find despair. Hope is a phantom, trapped in the gloom. Monsters own the night, sealing your doom. Town's got secrets, buried underground. Every lost soul, here they are found. Cursed by the darkness, can't break free. Vision after vision, haunting memories. Fromville nights, monsters out to feed. Trapped in visions, fear plants the seed. Lighthouse calls, but escape's a myth. Nightmares wrap around on an endless drift.
You don't fucking break me. That's what she said. No! 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 No!
escape's a myth. Nightmares wrap around on an endless drift.
What? Okay, say it again. I know. Come on, please don't. Hey, don't. Okay, look at him. Keep looking at him. I'm sorry. You're so strong. Just... No. I know. God. I know. Look. No. Look at me.